They laughed when I reached the top step, not because it was funny, but because it was easy. Easy to humiliate someone who couldn't move fast enough to matter. My daughter's voice rang through the hallway like a bell no one asked to hear. If we made a drinking game out of how long it takes you to climb the stairs, we'd all be unconscious. The room erupted. Wine glasses clinked. Laughter spilled like cheap perfume. And I just stood there, clutching the banister, trying not to let my hands tremble. Trying not to remember how many of those hands I had held through fever and fear. Ashley always liked attention. Even as a child, she'd perform in the living room, balancing on coffee tables like they were Broadway stages. But this performance wasn't cute. It was cruel, and she knew it. That's why she waited until her friends were over. That's why she poured extra wine and told them stories about her quirky old mother, who moved like syrup and smelled like Vicks. I didn't say a word. I smiled, the kind of smile that makes your face hurt, the kind you wear like armor. I turned slowly and walked back down those stairs she had mocked me for climbing, each step echoing louder than her laughter. And when I reached the bottom, I didn't go to my room. I went to the kitchen. I scrubbed dishes no one thanked me for, wiped crumbs that weren't mine. I cleaned because it was easier than crying, and I had learned, over many long years, that dignity doesn't have to be loud. It just has to be intact. Ashley's husband, Brent, passed behind me once, said nothing. Not even a nod. He used to call me Ma when they were dating. Now he barely acknowledged my breath. I suppose that's what happens when you become furniture. Useful, quiet, easy to ignore. Later that night, after the guests had left and the dishwasher hummed, I sat on the end of my bed and listened. Their laughter still buzzed upstairs, muffled by carpet and entitlement. I stared at my hands, swollen at the knuckles, veins like rivers. These hands once held her as she wailed over skinned knees. These hands built school lunches, fixed hems, wrote checks for field trips she never thanked me for. She forgot all that. Or maybe she remembered, and it just didn't matter anymore. A week earlier, she had said, "You should be grateful, you know. Most people your age don't have somewhere to live." I blinked at her then. Just blinked. She hadn't asked what I had done with my life. She hadn't asked how it felt to hand over my house when my husband died. She didn't know, or care, that the antique dresser in her guest room, the one she'd shoved into the corner, had once belonged to my mother, that it had travelled through 3 states and 2 marriages and still stood steady. But I knew. I remembered everything. That night, after her snide little stare comment, I didn't cry. I made tea, sat in the quiet and sipped it slow, and I began to think. Not the kind of thinking you do when you're angry. No, this was something colder, something clearer. Because I may be old, I may be slow, but I'm not stupid. And I haven't forgotten how to be a mother. I haven't forgotten how to protect. Not myself, not for a long time, but others. You see, I have a sister, Loretta, 3 years younger, a retired nurse with a laugh that could break through brick. Her kids, my nieces and nephews, they used to spend summers with me when Loretta was picking up double shifts. I sewed Halloween costumes, taught them to bake banana bread, let them paint my porch swing neon blue. They wrote thank you notes. They hugged me without being asked. They never made jokes about how slowly I climbed stairs. They still call, still send Christmas cards. And suddenly, sitting there with the tea going cold in my lap, I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to say out loud. Ashley doesn't deserve any of it. Not the heirloom jewelry, not the savings, not the house I sold to make sure she could go to college without debt, not the antique dresser her shoes scuff daily. Just because I stayed silent doesn't mean I forgot how to speak. I reached into the top drawer of the nightstand, pulled out a faded notebook, the one I'd kept tucked behind socks for years. Inside were addresses, phone numbers, birthdays. I remembered even when my knees didn't. I turned the page and circled Loretta's oldest granddaughter. Sweet girl. Just had a baby. Named him after her father. Never asked me for a dime, but always called on my birthday. The next morning, before Ashley woke up, I took the elevator. Not in the house. No, the house doesn't have one. But the lawyer's building does. 3rd floor. The button lit up yellow. And I rode that elevator higher than I had felt in years. I signed the first paper at 9:34 a.m., and I didn't look back. You'd be amazed at how invisible you can become in a house you helped pay for. At first, it's little things. The way they stop asking what you want for dinner because they assume you'll eat whatever's left. The way your favorite chair gets moved to make room and never returns. The way no one notices when your laundry goes unfolded or your slippers disappear under someone else's mess. But after a while, you stop being surprised. You start moving quieter. You wait until everyone else has gone to bed before making your tea. You learn which stairs creak so you don't wake anyone, even though you live there too. Ashley never yelled. That wasn't her style. She preferred subtle weapons, sarcasm like silk, eye rolls like punctuation, comments delivered with a smile so sweet it took a second to register they were insults. "Oh, Mom, you're still using that old hairbrush? That's so vintage. You still write checks? That's adorable. Maybe you should rest instead of helping. I mean, you did your part, like, years ago." I didn't argue. I just kept folding dish towels, wiping countertops. I didn't want to make trouble. That's what we do, don't we? Women like me. We keep the peace. We stay quiet because noise takes up space. And we've been told for so long that we've already had our share. The day after the stair joke, I watched her from the kitchen window. Ashley stood on the deck, phone in hand, laughing. She was telling the story to someone, probably that same crowd from the other night. No, seriously, she takes forever. I could finish a podcast before she gets up there. I'm not kidding. I turned back to my sink, washed the same coffee mug 3 times. Brent walked in and didn't look at me. He was always polite enough to be cruel, never raised his voice, but never lowered it when I was in the room either. If I asked how his day was, he answered with, "Fine," like I'd interrupted something more important. I was the ghost who folded his underwear, the maid who asked nothing, expected nothing. Sometimes, when they had friends over, I stayed in my room. Not because I wasn't welcome. No, they'd always smile and say, "You can join us if you want." But they never meant it. You can hear it in the way someone sets a plate for you without silverware. You can feel it in the pause after your joke doesn't land. You can taste it in the way wine glasses clink without your name being toasted. So I stayed away. I had a plant once. A small basil pot I kept by the kitchen window. It smelled like summer and spaghetti sauce and better days. One morning, I came downstairs and found it gone. "Ashley," I asked gently, "did you move my basil?" She didn't even look up from her phone. "Oh, yeah. It was getting in the way of the coffee setup." That was it. No apology. No, I moved it to the porch. No, I watered it. Just gone. The funny thing is, I didn't cry over the plant. I cried when I went to water it and realized I was still holding the empty cup. A few nights later, Ashley told me, with a bright smile and a hand on my shoulder, "You know, Mum, it might be better if you didn't come down until after 10 a.m. Brent has early meetings, and he says the kettle wakes him up." So I waited. I stayed in my room. I tiptoed around my own mornings. One afternoon, while folding sheets, I overheard her on the phone again, this time with her friend Maya. I mean, she just sort of exists. She doesn't do anything. It's like having a piece of antique furniture that talks. I folded the corner of the sheet tighter than necessary. Then I folded it again. She didn't know I'd heard. But even if she had, I'm not sure it would have mattered. The next day, I baked banana bread. The way she used to like it. No walnuts, extra cinnamon. I left it on the counter with a note. Fresh. Eat while warm. When I came back an hour later, half of it was gone. No note, no thank you. Just crumbs and silence. I threw the rest in the trash. That evening, I sat in the backyard by myself. The sun was low, the kind that makes the air shimmer like memory. I thought about the summers Ashley spent running through sprinklers, screaming with laughter. I used to sit in that same chair, soaking in the joy like sunlight. Now I sat there because there was nowhere else I felt permitted to be. She came outside once, saw me, then turned back in without a word. I had become the background to her life. But even wallpaper remembers who hung it. That night, in the quiet of my room, I opened the notebook again, turned to a clean page, wrote 3 names: my sister Loretta, her daughter Denise, and her son Michael. Beside them I wrote, "They remember." I may have been mocked for climbing stairs, but I was done apologizing for standing tall. There's something cruel about how memories arrive when you least expect them, like house guests showing up without warning, dragging their old suitcases across your quiet thoughts. That week, I couldn't move without bumping into the past. It started with a smell: lemon oil. Ashley had cleaned the banister with it, and suddenly I was back in the old house. The one James and I bought in 1969 with a leaky roof and walls we painted ourselves. I saw him, my husband, standing in the foyer, shirt rolled up to his elbows, hands streaked with paint, smiling like a man who didn't yet know how short life could be. We'd only been married 6 years then. He worked long shifts, fixing plumbing for a city that never stopped breaking. I worked in the school cafeteria, hairnet and all, and saved every penny I could in a coffee can under the sink. It took us 3 years to afford that house. It was crooked and small and smelled of mildew, but it was ours. I remember the day we brought Ashley home from the hospital. James carried her in with the same care he used on cracked pipes. She had a shock of black hair and lungs that filled the room. We didn't have a nursery yet, so we set up a crib in our bedroom. I barely slept for weeks. Not from exhaustion, but from staring at her tiny chest rising and falling, terrified it might stop. She used to cling to me, wouldn't let go of my finger even in her sleep. "You're her whole world," James would whisper. I believed him. Funny how the world shrinks as they grow. By the time she was 9, she stopped letting me walk her into school. By 13, she rolled her eyes when I asked about her day. And at 16, when James died, she didn't cry at the funeral. She just stood there in that black dress I had to beg her to wear, staring straight ahead like grief was too inconvenient to show. I held it for both of us, the weight of his absence, the quiet that filled our house. I worked double shifts, sold his old tools, cancelled cable, paid the mortgage until Ashley graduated, then sold the house when it got too much for just me and the ghosts. Ashley never asked what I gave up to make sure she could go to college. She just packed her bags and left. I rented a room after that. Small, sunless, but quiet. I knitted scarves for strangers and tried not to need much. She called sometimes, not often. When she did, it was always short. "You okay? Need anything? Happy birthday." I told myself it was enough, that she was busy, building a life. When she got married, she invited me to the reception, but not the ceremony. "It's just small," she said, "only a few people." There were 64 guests. I counted the chairs. Still, I smiled, bought her a hand mixer from the registry, wrote a card that said, "Wishing you love like your father's. Quiet, steady, unshakable." She never mentioned it. And yet, despite it all, when she called 5 years ago and said, "Mum, why don't you come stay with us for a while? It'll be easier. You shouldn't be alone anymore." I packed my things. I told myself maybe this was her way of returning the warmth. Maybe she had grown into kindness. I should have asked why she needed me, not why she wanted me. Because now I see it. The free childcare I gave when her work ran late. The casseroles I made when she had guests. The laundry I folded. The socks I matched. The mail I brought in. The dog I walked when no one else could be bothered. She didn't invite me to rest. She hired me without pay. But Loretta, she was different. 3 years younger, yes, but always the one with the fire. When we were girls, she once threw a shoe at a boy for calling me fat. When she became a nurse, she worked in hospice because she said she liked helping people in their last chapters. Said dignity mattered more near the end. She had 3 kids. I helped raise them in my own way. Summer visits, holiday sleepovers, birthday cakes with too much frosting. Denise, the eldest, once told her mother, "Aunt Fran makes the world feel safe." She was 8. She still says it now. Last year, when I turned 78, Loretta mailed me a card with a photograph inside, the 5 of them at dinner. On the back, it said, "We saved you a seat." Ashley gave me a candle from a clearance bin. The difference burned brighter than any wick. That night, I took out the notebook again, added a name, Denise Harper. Underneath it, I wrote, "They made me feel seen. I won't forget that. And I won't. Because the world may forget who we were. Our children may forget the nights we sat by their fevers. Our families may forget the years we gave without asking. But I won't forget myself. Not anymore." The next morning, I opened the drawer, pulled out the phone book, and circled a name I hadn't dialed in years, Bernard Keller, attorney at law. Ashley laughed at how long it took me to climb stairs. So I was going to take the elevator to his office and never come back the same. Loretta didn't say anything at first, just breathed, like someone who'd been waiting for the phone to ring but didn't expect it would. "It's been a while," she said, and I could hear the coffee mug in her hand being set down gently. No surprise. She always brewed her first cup at 7 sharp. "It has," I answered. A pause. "You okay?" That question used to mean something. Now it meant, how much can I handle today? But I gave her the truth anyway. "I'm tired." Loretta's voice dropped into that register only sisters know, the one you use when the air around the other person feels too heavy. "Talk to me." I did. I told her about the basil plant, the banana bread, the joke about the stairs, the silence from Ashley, the silence inside Ashley. Loretta didn't gasp. She didn't interrupt. She just let me speak, like someone pulling loose threads from a tangled sweater, patient and steady. When I finally stopped, she said, "Francis, honey, when did you start thinking you had to earn your place?" That broke something. Not loudly, not with tears, but quietly, like a plate that cracks down the center but still sits on the shelf. I realized I didn't have an answer. I couldn't remember the exact moment I started shrinking, but I could see the aftermath. All the rooms I tiptoed through, all the thoughts I swallowed whole. "She's my daughter," I whispered. "She's a woman," Loretta said. "And so are you. One of you forgot that. It's not you." For a second, I just breathed. Then I asked the thing I hadn't let myself ask in years. "Do your kids ever talk about me?" Loretta laughed, soft and sure. "Are you joking? Denise calls you her second mother." Michael still has the scarf you knitted him when he broke his arm. Nora named her middle child Francis. You live in this house even when you're not here. I closed my eyes. They remember? I asked. Fran, she said. They never stopped. That night I didn't sleep. I folded and refolded a cardigan that didn't need folding. I polished my shoes, the low black ones with rubber soles. I watered the plant I had smuggled into my room and named quietly, Hope. And I laid out the deed. Yes, the deed. Because what Ashley never knew, what she never cared to ask, was that I never sold everything. I kept one savings account in my name only, and I kept one small property. A cottage James and I had bought as a dream, tucked 2 hours out of town, surrounded by pine and stubborn weeds. We never got to fix it up. But I never let it go. I didn't mention it when I moved in. Why would I? She never asked. She assumed everything I had belonged to her. My time, my stories, my future. But it didn't. Not anymore. The next morning, I called Bernard Keller. Same number, same voice. Francis Lewis? He said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. Well, I'll be damned. You still breathing? Barely, I said, but breathing enough to sign a few things. He gave me an appointment for the next morning. I pulled my coat from the closet, the one with the deep pockets that made me feel like a woman who still had somewhere to go. Ashley passed me in the hallway and asked, Doctor's appointment? No, I said. Just some errands. She nodded. Didn't ask what kind. It's always the same with people who think you have nowhere left to go. They don't imagine you might have somewhere to be. I took the bus. I didn't tell Loretta yet. I wasn't ready to say the words out loud, but I carried her voice with me. You're a woman too. Don't forget it. At Bernard's office, the carpet still smelled of old paper and stronger coffee. The receptionist offered me water. I declined. I wanted the moment to stay dry, crisp, sharp. We sat across from each other at a desk with a chipped corner and a stack of yellow folders. What are we doing? Bernard asked, glasses sliding low on his nose. I want to draft a new will, I said. I want everything to go to Loretta's children, not Ashley, not her husband, just them. He blinked once, then nodded. You sure? I've never been more. He pulled out a form. What about personal items? Let me list them. And I did. The cottage, the savings account, the antique dresser, yes, the one Ashley scuffs with her shoes, the jewellery she thinks is fake, the recipe box, my photo albums, every bit of me that mattered, to be given to the ones who remembered. We talked for nearly 2 hours. He didn't rush, just let the pen move as my voice steadied. I didn't cry once. By the end, he looked at me and said, Francis, this is going to raise hell when it's opened. I'm counting on it. That night, I sat on my bed and stared at the paper, drafted, unsent, but real, and mine. The day I signed it, the wind was sharp enough to steal your breath. I liked that. It reminded me I still had some left to lose. Bernard's office felt warmer than usual. Maybe it was the heater. Maybe it was the feeling of doing something that finally made sense. He slid the final draft toward me like it was an offering. Here she is, he said. Last will and testament of Francis May Lewis. I adjusted my reading glasses. The frames had a crack near the hinge, held together with a dot of glue and a prayer. Ashley once offered to buy me new ones, then rolled her eyes when I declined. Said I was being overly sentimental. No, I was being precise. I know what fits. I read every word. Slowly. Carefully. Not because I didn't trust Bernard. I did. But because I wanted to feel it. The shift. the click of things falling into their rightful place. Every item, every dollar, every dusty photo and chipped china plate. All of it was going to Loretta's children, people who had asked for nothing, people who had given warmth without an invoice attached. Ashley wasn't mentioned once, and yet she was all over the page, in the spaces between the lines, in the omission that spoke louder than any inclusion ever could. Bernard handed me the pen. "You ready?" I nodded. The ink was blue, the kind that stains just long enough to mean something. I signed with a hand steadier than it had been in years, not because I wasn't nervous, but because I was finally certain. 3 witnesses signed too: the receptionist, a paralegal, some kid in the hallway who looked at me with surprise, as if old women didn't usually handle their own business. They don't, I wanted to say, but I do. Afterward, Bernard reached across the desk and touched my hand. Not soft, firm, like someone sealing a deal that mattered. "You sure you don't want to send her a copy?" he asked. I shook my head. "Let her find out when it counts." He didn't argue. That's why I chose Bernard. He always knew when not to speak. Outside, I stood for a moment under the grey sky and let the wind push against my coat. I wasn't cold, not really. I had heat in my chest now, a slow kind, not fire, more like coals. I didn't go straight home. I stopped at a bakery I used to visit with James, bought 2 scones, one with raisins, one with lemon. I ate them both on a park bench, watching pigeons squabble over nothing. I thought about how often I'd done that in my life, made noise over scraps. Not anymore. When I returned, Ashley was in the living room, curled on the couch with her tablet. "Good day?" she asked, not looking up. "Productive," I said. "Good," she replied, tapping at her screen. "Dinner's takeout." Of course it was. I went upstairs, quietly, slowly. But this time I didn't curse the steps. Each one felt lighter than the last. By the time I reached the top, I wasn't gasping. I was breathing. Really breathing. In my room, I placed the signed will inside a folder. Then I slid it into the bottom of my suitcase, the good one, with wheels and a zippered compartment no one checks. I didn't lock it. I didn't need to. Some secrets protect themselves. Later that night, I called Denise. She answered on the second ring. "Aunt Fran?" "Hey, sweetheart." She paused. "Are you okay?" "I'm better than I've been in years." I told her. Not everything, but enough. There was a long silence on the other end. Then a sound I hadn't heard in a long time. Tears that weren't mine. She cried because someone had finally seen her love and named it worthy. "Why us?" she asked. "Why not Ashley?" I let that hang there, not because I didn't know, but because sometimes the most powerful answers are the ones you don't dilute with words. Instead, I said, "You remembered me when no one else did." She didn't argue. Denise is good like that. The next day, I received a small package at the front door. Inside was a framed photo, me and Loretta and all 3 of her kids. It was taken 20 years ago, on a summer porch, everyone barefoot, everyone smiling. On the back was a note in Denise's hand. "You saved us once. Let us return the favor." I placed the frame on my nightstand, beside the old alarm clock Ashley wanted to replace. I liked the tick of it. It reminded me that time still moved, but I had decided how it moved for me now. Ashley kept living her life, laughing, hosting, scrolling, still asking me to keep the volume low when I watched my shows, still calling me Mom only when guests were around. But I didn't mind anymore, because every time I opened that closet and saw the suitcase, I remembered I had already left. The notary came to the house on a Tuesday afternoon. Ashley thought he was there for Brent. She was making a smoothie, something green and loud, when the doorbell rang. I opened it before she had a chance. "Ms. Frances Lewis?" he asked, glancing down at the clipboard. "That's me," I said, stepping aside. Ashley barely looked up. "Brent's office is upstairs." "He's here for me," I said. That made her pause. The notary, young man, polite, with a trimmed beard and efficient shoes, followed me to the dining room. I had already cleared the table, laid out every document, made sure my pen had enough ink. I even wiped down the surface twice. Not because it needed it, but because it calmed my hands. Ashley didn't ask questions. Not then. She just raised her eyebrows and returned to the blender, noise filling the kitchen like a shield. He sat across from me, flipped through the pages, and said, "You've prepared everything perfectly." "Always do," I answered. Then, slowly, we began. The cottage, the accounts, the assets, my possessions, named, described, assigned, my wishes, clear, direct, final. He notarized each page, asked for my ID, took a photocopy, had me sign 3 times, then a fourth. When it was done, he stood, extended his hand, and said, "It's rare that people handle these things so thoroughly. You've done something good here." I nodded. "I know." He left without fanfare. Ashley watched from the staircase, holding her smoothie like it was a wine glass. "What was that about?" she asked. "Just tying up loose ends." She squinted. "You're not sick, are you?" "No." "Oh, okay." And she disappeared again, back into her online meeting or yoga app, or whatever noise she used to drown out the sound of her own mother being whole. That night, I sat in the backyard alone. The sky was low, a sheet of soft grey. Brent had left for work drinks. Ashley had gone upstairs early with a face mask and a podcast. I watered the 2 potted plants she hadn't noticed I brought back inside. One was basil, the other, a small violet, just beginning to bloom. I'd planted it from seed in a teacup. Something about growing life in the smallest container comforted me. I sipped tea and let the silence stretch. It felt good, this new kind of quiet. Not the kind that presses you down, makes you shrink, but the kind that makes room, like a freshly made bed. The next morning, I called Denise again. "I signed everything," I told her. She exhaled into the phone. "You really did it." "I really did." Then she said something that caught me off guard. "I'm proud of you." I hadn't heard that in a long time, maybe ever. When Ashley was little, she used to run into the kitchen waving her drawings, yelling, "Look what I made." I'd clap, kiss her forehead, pin them to the fridge like they were masterpieces. But no one had ever done that for me. Not really. And now, with just those 4 words, Denise had done it. I sat down, carefully, on the edge of the bed, and let myself feel it. That someone in this world saw me not as a shadow, or a burden, or a relic, but as a woman who had done something worth honouring. After we hung up, I took out the will one more time, just to look, just to remind myself I wasn't dreaming. My name, their names, everything aligned. It was done. The weight I'd carried for years, the fear of being erased, had finally shifted. Not vanished, no. But it had moved, like a heavy box slid to the side of a room you no longer lived in. And that night, as I folded my nightgown, turned off the lamp, and lay down with the photo from Denise beside me, I thought, I may walk slow, but I've never walked in the wrong direction. The shift didn't happen all at once. Ashley didn't wake up one morning and suddenly become cruel. No, she drifted into it. Slowly, like someone easing into a too-hot bath, telling herself it was fine. That's the thing about indifference. It's not an explosion, it's erosion. And the strange part, you almost don't notice until one day the floor's gone under your feet. It was a Wednesday morning when I saw it most clearly. I had come down early to fix breakfast, not out of obligation, but habit. 2 eggs, toast, black tea, no sugar. I had just turned off the burner when Ashley came in, wearing a blazer too sharp for the life she lived and a purse too expensive for the job she always complained about. She didn't say good morning. She didn't say anything at all. Just looked at the stove, then at me. "Are you still cooking on weekdays?" she asked, in a tone that wasn't curious. I blinked. "Just for myself." She sighed, loudly. "Brent and I are trying to be more mindful about the smell of food lingering. It clings to fabrics." I looked down at the tea steeping on the counter. "It's just eggs." "Still," she said, opening the window slightly. "Try to be mindful, okay?" I nodded, but something inside me didn't. After she left, I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the place where she'd been. I realized she hadn't looked at me. Not really. She hadn't seen the slippers I knitted myself after surgery, or the bruise on my forearm from bumping into the cabinet she moved without telling me, or the fact that I'd used the last of the eggs, not because I forgot to ask for more, but because I no longer asked at all. That afternoon, Brent came home early. I was in the den, reading. He walked past me, paused, then turned. "Hey," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "Can we ask you not to watch TV so loud in the evenings? The walls in this place are thinner than we thought." I didn't even look up. It was on volume 12. "Still," he mumbled. "It carries." I closed the book. "Of course," I said. He gave a quick nod and walked away. Later, in the laundry room, I found my clothes still damp, crumpled in the washer under Ashley's Pilates gear. The dryer was running, but it was full of her things. I wrung out my cardigan in the sink, quietly, and hung it outside to dry. She texted me half an hour later. "Please don't hang laundry outside. It ruins the curb appeal." I stared at the screen. No greeting, no punctuation, no regard, just a command. I didn't reply. Instead, I went upstairs and opened the bottom drawer of my nightstand. I pulled out the envelope Denise had given me the week before. Inside was a map she'd drawn of the cottage, notes in the margins about repairs, potential furniture placement, herb garden ideas. At the bottom, she'd written, "This is yours. All of it. And you're not alone anymore." I traced the outline of the back porch with my finger. It had a view of the trees. Ashley never even noticed I liked trees. That evening, I made my tea and sat in the corner chair of the living room. Ashley and Brent were watching something on TV. I didn't want to interrupt, so I stayed quiet, sipping slowly. Midway through the show, Ashley looked over. "Are you going to sit there all night?" I wasn't bothering anyone. "It's just a little crowded," she said, gesturing toward the space I occupied. "Could you maybe go to your room?" I stood, not in anger, but in clarity. "I live here," I said. Ashley blinked. "Yes, and we've let you." That word, let, as if kindness was a lease, as if my presence had been a favor. I didn't argue, didn't slam the mug on the counter. I simply turned and walked away, not just from the room, but from the fiction I had let her build. That I owed her something for existing in the home I had helped fund with the sale of the life I left behind. Upstairs, I opened my suitcase, touched the paperwork, ran my hand over the deed, and whispered to myself, just once. Not for much longer. She waited until Brent was out of town. That's how I knew it wasn't casual. It was a Sunday, the kind where the air hangs heavy and the light feels too yellow. Ashley came down late, wearing joggers, and that tone she saved for when she thought she was being reasonable. I was knitting in the kitchen, something small, a washcloth maybe. I wasn't even counting stitches, just moving my hands so they wouldn't freeze into fists. "Mum," she started, leaning against the counter like she had rehearsed this. "Can we talk about something real quick?" I nodded, but I didn't stop knitting. "So," she said, drawing the word out, "Brent and I have been talking, and it would really simplify things if we moved some stuff around. Legally, I mean." My needles paused. "Stuff?" I asked. She smiled, that tight one that makes your skin crawl. "The property, that little cabin or whatever it is, and the accounts. We're not trying to take anything. It's just for planning. Tax benefits. Easier paperwork down the line. You'd still have full access, of course." I looked at her then, really looked, at the way she kept tugging at the hem of her shirt, at the way her eyes slid to the side and then back again. She had never learned to lie well. She just got used to people not calling her on it. "I didn't know you were aware of the cottage," I said. She shrugged. "It came up. Brent found some paperwork while organizing the office files. It's not a big deal." "No. Just the house James and I dreamed about when we were too broke for vacations. Just the last thing I owned with my name carved into the title like it meant something." "And you want me to sign it over?" I said, flat. "Not over," she said quickly. "Just into joint ownership, or maybe a trust, with me as the manager. You wouldn't notice a difference." I set the needles down, gently, deliberately. "Do you know how long I've had that place?" I asked. She blinked. "Does it matter?" That was when I stood. Not fast, not dramatic, but tall. "It matters to me." Ashley's face changed then, like a mask slipping. She wasn't smiling anymore. "It's not like we're asking you to move out of it," she said. "You don't even live there. You live here, with us, for free." There it was. The debt she had been quietly tallying in her mind. I nodded slowly. "I see." Ashley crossed her arms. "It's just a signature, Mum. Walter, that old notary you used years ago, he can do it, if he's still alive." I stepped forward, close enough to smell the lavender soap she'd always used like armor. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "No." She flinched, just slightly. "Excuse me?" I said no. "I'm not signing anything. That house is mine. Those accounts are mine. And I'm done pretending I don't know what you're doing." Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Good. Let silence do the talking for once. I turned, walked to the sink, and poured out the rest of my tea. Behind me, her voice returned, clipped and cold. "You're making a mistake." I didn't answer. Because no, I wasn't. She didn't bring it up again for 3 days. But something had changed. The air in the house turned tight, like a belt cinched one notch too far. She moved quieter, but not softer. Doors closed a little harder. Dishes clinked with more bite. The sugar bowl went missing from the counter, the one I used for my morning tea. When I asked about it, she said, "Oh, I put it away. It's not really part of the aesthetic." The aesthetic. As if my comfort was clutter. As if I was. On Thursday, she left a folder on the kitchen table. No note, no explanation. Just there. Thick, white, glossy, and closed with a binder clip. I didn't touch it until she left the house. Inside were printouts, refinancing proposals, equity projections, property tax estimates. A typed letter, unsigned, with phrases like, liquidation of static assets, and streamlined succession strategy. There was a line that read, "Subject currently residing rent-free with familial support. Subject." Like I was a variable, a placeholder. And tucked inside, like a forgotten apology, was a transfer document, already filled out, just waiting for a signature. I didn't tear it up. I didn't burn it. I folded it once, cleanly, and placed it in the back of my closet, beside the birth certificate James had carried in his wallet for years. Later that evening, Ashley came home early. Brent trailed behind her, silent. She walked straight into the kitchen, took off her shoes, and leaned against the island like a woman expecting applause. "So?" she said. I looked up from the sink. "So what?" "The papers." I dried my hands on a towel, folded it, placed it on the stove handle. "No," I said again. Her mouth tightened. "You're being dramatic." I stepped away from the sink. "No, Ashley. I'm being clear." Brent shifted beside her. "Fran, it really would help us out. There's no reason for all this." "There is," I said sharply. "There's a lifetime of reasons." Ashley laughed once, short, hollow. "So that's it? You're just refusing to help your family?" "I have helped," I said. "More than you'll ever know." She scoffed. "Please, you cook, you knit, you sit. That's not help." I stared at her then. "I raised you." "And I let you live here," she snapped, stepping closer. "This is our house." "No," I said, my voice low, calm. "It's just where I've been sleeping." She blinked. "You think you're owed something," I continued, "because I got tired, because I slowed down, because I didn't fight back when you made the jokes. But this was never yours." "You're delusional?" Brent said nothing. Ashley crossed her arms. "Then maybe it's time you find somewhere else to sleep." I looked at her, my daughter, and saw not a woman, not even a child, but a stranger wearing someone I used to know. I walked past her without another word, climbed the stairs slowly, and packed a single bag. No one asked where I was going. No one offered to help. At the top of the stairs, I paused for just a moment, not to rest, but to remember. Then I zipped the bag and closed the door. I packed like someone who'd done it before. Not because I had, not recently at least, but because a woman remembers how to leave, even if she forgets where she last put her reading glasses. The bag wasn't large, just enough for a week or two. I didn't need much. The things I needed couldn't fit in a suitcase anyway. Respect, quiet, a place where no one called me subject on paper. I took only what belonged to me by memory. James's old sweater, soft at the elbows. The framed photo of us at the beach, when Ashley was small and still liked to hold my hand. My tea strainer. The little notebook where I'd written everything I'd given and everything they thought I'd forget. The rest? Let them keep it. Let them stare at it every day and wonder why it doesn't feel like theirs. I didn't leave a note. I didn't owe them explanation. They'd notice, eventually, when the towels weren't folded, when no one restocked the coffee, when the basil wasn't watered. But by then, I'd be long gone. Denise had already made the arrangements. A small place near the edge of town, not fancy, but warm, clean, bright. The kind of space where laughter doesn't echo against silence. She called it a guest suite, but I knew what it really was. A welcome. When I stepped outside, the air was sharp and clear. Morning hadn't broken yet, but the sky was threatening to. I stood at the curb with my wheeled bag and waited. A car pulled up, not Denise's, but Michael's. He stepped out, tall now, broader than I remembered, with the same shy grin he had at 12 when he spilled lemonade on my Bible. "Aunt Fran," he said. "Michael." He didn't ask for my bag, just took it, quietly, with both hands, like it was sacred. The ride was short. We didn't speak much, but silence with him was different. Not avoidance, just comfort. A space where no one had to fill the air to feel seen. When we arrived, Denise was waiting on the porch. She wore slippers and a robe, her hair still wet from the shower, like she hadn't wanted to waste a second being dressed properly before seeing me. "You're here," she said. "I am." She didn't hug me right away. She just opened the door. "Come inside," she said. "You're home." The room smelled of fresh linen and cinnamon. A lamp glowed in the corner. On the bed sat a folded quilt I recognized, one I'd made for her when she left for college, hand-stitched over 3 weeks, one square at a time while watching James's old westerns. "You kept it," I said. "Of course I did." I stood in the center of the room for a while, not because I didn't know what to do, but because I wanted to feel it. The weight of the moment, the absence of contempt, the small miracle of being wanted. Later, Denise made tea. We sat on the porch, wrapped in blankets, watching the sky shift from indigo to gold. She didn't ask questions. I didn't offer explanations. We just sat, sipping slowly, like the years hadn't passed without us seeing each other properly. She reached over and placed her hand over mine. "You did the right thing," she said. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. Ashley didn't call that first day, or the second, not even a text. Maybe she thought it was a stunt, a sulk. Maybe she assumed I'd be back by the weekend, asking what was for dinner like nothing had happened. She didn't know me at all. On the third morning, Denise handed me an envelope, heavy, crisp, from Bernard's office. "It's time," she said. I nodded. Inside was everything. The notarized deed transfer, the legal notifications, the revocation of any assumed rights, and a cover letter, short, professional, final. It had one sentence that mattered most. "Effective immediately, Frances May Lewis has executed full legal transfer of her estate to the descendants of Loretta Jean Harper." Below that, another document, addressed to Ashley and Brent, stating that they had 7 days to vacate the cottage property they had no legal claim to. Ashley would read it. And for the first time in her life, she'd find my name where she didn't expect it. On the sender line. Not Mom, not Mother, just Frances M. Lewis. As real as ink. We sent it by courier. Bernard said it would arrive by 9:01 a.m. By 9:12, my phone began to buzz. I didn't answer. Then came the texts. "Mum, what is this? Are you out of your mind? Call me now. This isn't funny." I sipped my tea, watched the sky shift. Denise folded laundry on the sofa without saying a word. By noon, Ashley had called 5 times, Brent once. Still no voicemail, still no apology. Just panic, shaped like urgency. At 2 p.m., Jessica, the real estate agent Denise had worked with, called to confirm the final signature on the release of the secondary property, the one they never knew existed, the one I had never listed on tax returns they casually browsed, assuming I had nothing left. Now it was gone. Sold. Quietly. Cleanly. The funds were transferred to a trust, one I'd set up in Denise's daughter's name. Ashley would find out eventually, and she'd be furious. But fury isn't the opposite of love. It's what follows entitlement. By the time the sun dipped low and the sky turned lavender, my phone had buzzed 27 times. And then, finally, a voicemail. Just 5 words. "How could you do this?" I didn't listen to the rest. That night, I sat on the porch with Denise and Michael. We shared a cobbler she'd made, still warm from the oven. They argued gently over whether it had too much nutmeg. I sat between them, smiling, and for the first time in years, I felt what I hadn't known I'd missed. Not comfort, not peace, belonging. The kind that doesn't have to be earned with obedience or silence. The kind that comes simply from being remembered right. By Friday, the whispers had begun. Not from Ashley, from the neighbours. Apparently the courier hadn't just delivered papers, he'd delivered theatre. Ashley stood on the porch in her robe, yelling into her phone, the documents flapping in the wind like white flags of war. I wasn't there to see it, but Denise's friend lives 2 doors down and called her in a whisper. "She looks like someone cracked her crown," she said, storming around the driveway like someone lit her mailbox on fire. By Sunday, the story had shape. She got kicked out. No, she's being sued. No, her own mother sold the house from under her. That one was true. I imagined Ashley pacing the hallway, calling anyone who would pick up, trying to find an angle. But there was no angle, no loophole, no fine print to twist in her favor. It was all mine, legally, quietly, finally. Monday morning, I received a message from Jessica, the real estate agent. A woman called claiming to be Francis Lewis's daughter, tried to dispute the property sale. I replied simply, "Miss Harper is the sole legal heir. All filings are complete. Please direct further communication to counsel." Jessica responded with a thumbs up, and that was that. At 4:27 p.m., Ashley called again. I didn't answer. At 4:34, she tried Denise. Denise didn't answer either. By dinner time, Ashley had messaged, "I hope you're happy. We have nowhere to go." I looked at the phone. The screen glowed, desperate. Still, no apology. No, "I'm sorry I made you feel small." No, "I forgot you were a person before you were my mother." Just rage, shaped like abandonment. Denise made stew that night. We sat at the table and passed bread, like nothing was ending in someone else's kitchen. After dessert, she stood and took my hand. "I want to show you something." She led me down the hall to a small spare room. Inside, boxes, labelled, neat, ready. "This is everything from the cottage," she said. "We cleared it out last weekend. It's ready for you whenever you are." I stared at the label on one. Linens, Aunt Fran, Aunt Fran. Not burden, not freeloader. Just who I was. Later that night, Michael knocked on my door. He held out a manila envelope. Inside, bank documents, a new checkbook, keys. "It's all set up," he said. "The trust, the account, the cottage. Everything's under your name or transferred where you asked. She can't touch any of it now." I looked up. "Not even if I forgave her?" He smiled, gently. Even then. I didn't sleep much that night. Not from nerves, from peace. From the strange ache that comes when something heavy finally leaves your chest and you don't quite know what to do with the emptiness. At 2 a.m., the phone buzzed again. Ashley. The message. "You raised me better than this." I didn't respond, because I had. And that's why I wasn't going back.